thought the Republican holdouts were saying that they would go as long as this takes. Is there any timeline that you think Democrats should step in at all, or are you willing to let this go on as well for, I don't know, weeks or however long they want to go?
We're ready, willing, and able to get to work on behalf of the American people. I think that's the sentiment of House Democrats. We'll have a conference convened by Pete Aguilar at 11 o'clock, and we'll discuss the way forward. But I expect that we are going to remain unified, resilient, and strong on behalf of the American people.
What's the message going to be to the caucus this morning in terms of, are you telling them to prepare for weekend, that you don't want them to be absent because that would lower the threshold for Kevin McCarthy? Are you going to whip to make sure that people are not going home, that they'll be here to fill those seats?
Well, whip questions are probably appropriately directed at the whip. And I'll let Catherine answer that. She's done a tremendous job to date, as we all expected that she would do, in keeping us together and strong and present and focused. But this is an open caucus discussion. It's a family discussion. And so we look forward to hearing from all of the members in terms of what needs to happen as we move forward and navigate our way through this unprecedented time. First time in 100 years that there is no Congress because of ambition or power grabs, dysfunction. And this is not a partisan criticism, understand this. It's embarrassing, it's dysfunctional, it's dangerous, it's stupid. Those are the words that Republicans have used to describe what's going on in the House Republican Conference right now.
You know, I cannot overstate how united our caucus is. 212, 212, 212, 212, 212, 212. 6 times we have voted unanimously for Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker. And we are here, we are in full attendance, and we are going to remain so because we understand, unlike our colleagues across the aisle, this is not political theater. This is about the fundamentals of our country, our government, and our responsibility to the American people.
So what is your message to the caucus, to your members, not to leave now?
Yes, and this is not a hard sell because they understand what is at stake. And this isn't about events and celebrations that they have planned, which, of course, you know, we would love to be able to do that. But this is about the dangerous moment that we are in. And it is about the chaos that the Republicans are creating. So we have to be here to make sure that we are doing everything possible to end this crisis, to get a functioning House of Representatives, and to get to work for the American people.
Gentleman from New York, Mr. Jeffries.
The minority leader is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the distinguished gentleman from New York for yielding, all of my colleagues for their continued leadership on this incredibly important issue. The 118th Congress has begun, and the differences between our side of the aisle and the other side of the aisle couldn't be any clearer. Now, let me, of course, reiterate that as Democrats, we look forward to trying to find common ground whenever and wherever possible to solve issues of consequence on behalf of the American people. But we will oppose extremism whenever it rears its ugly head. Democrats have made clear we are going to continue to work on issues like lower costs, better paying jobs, safer communities, defend democracy, protect the public interest, ensure economic opportunity in every single zip code, and yes, fight for reproductive freedom. My Republican colleagues, you promised to come to Washington to fight for the American people, but have spent a lot of time fighting each other on politics, power, and personality, not working on issues related to the public interest. That's what the last few days have indicated, an extreme MAGA Republican agenda. Now that you are getting into substance, on Monday, you pass a bill designed to allow the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected to cheat on their taxes, subsidize the lifestyles of the rich and shameless, benefit millionaires and billionaires, not working-class families, not middle-class families, not low-income families, not veterans, not everyday Americans, the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. That was on Monday. Then on Tuesday, you come to the floor and you pass a select committee on insurrection protection, a committee that is clearly designed, in the words of some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, to obstruct justice as part of your evident desire, as many of you have said, to eventually defund the FBI. That was Tuesday. And now on Wednesday, you come to the floor. Nothing on inflation, nothing on quality of life issues for the American people, nothing even on public safety. But you come to the floor as part of your march to criminalize abortion care, to impose a nationwide ban, to set into motion government-mandated pregnancies. So that's the distinction for today. As Democrats, we believe in a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions. Period, full stop. A decision that should be between a woman, her family, and her doctors. Period, full stop. We believe in Roe v. Wade. You wonder about our position? That's it. The Women's Health Protection Act. That's it. Freedom to make your own reproductive health care decisions. That's it. As compared to a clear effort, that's what this bill is about today, a march toward criminalizing abortion care. A nationwide ban, government-mandated pregnancies, part of an extreme MAGA Republican agenda. And so, yes, we continue to extend our hand of partnership if you truly want to work on quality of life issues. But we haven't seen it. We haven't seen it on Monday, we haven't seen it on Tuesday, and we're not seeing it today. So we oppose this bill, we oppose an extreme MAGA Republican agenda, and let's get back to the business of the American people. I yield back. Heather?
Yes, sir. George Santos, one of your delegation members, so far 5 Republicans have called for him to resign, including 4 in New York. Do you think that he should resign, and do you expect Democrats to try to take any action to force some kind of House punishment for him?
Well, the spectacle that is George Santos speaks for itself. He's a complete and total fraud, lied to the voters of the 3rd Congressional District in New York, deceived and connived his way into Congress, and it's now the responsibility of House Republicans to do something about it. There are ongoing investigations. The Nassau County District Attorney investigating George Santos. The Queens County District Attorney investigating George Santos. The State Attorney General investigating George Santos. Apparently, the U.S. Attorney from the Eastern District of New York investigating George Santos. Brazilian authorities investigating George Santos. And ethics complaints have been filed calling for an investigation of George Santos. This is not a partisan issue, but it is an issue that Republicans need to handle. Clean up your house. And you can start with George Santos. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with Leader Chuck Schumer, who's done an extraordinary job over the last several years, ushering into law an incredible agenda on behalf of the American people to make life better for everyday Americans, which is what drives House Democrats, Senate Democrats, certainly President Biden. And we're thankful for President Biden's leadership. And as House Democrats, we're thankful for the tremendous leadership of Chuck Schumer. The Republicans continue to double and triple down on their extreme agenda. We know they're extreme as it relates to reproductive freedom. We believe in a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions. Republicans want to impose a nationwide ban. We believe in Social Security and Medicare. Extreme MAGA Republicans want to destroy Social Security and Medicare. We believe in democracy. Many extreme MAGA Republicans apparently don't believe in democracy anymore. They have an extreme agenda. It continues. And the so-called Fair Tax Act is another example of the extremist agenda that Republicans are trying to jam down the throats of the American people. The so-called Fair Tax Act is unfair, unconscionable, and un-American. It will impose a tax hike that is dramatic on 90% of the American people, working families, middle-class folks, seniors, and those who aspire to be part of the middle class, the poor, the sick, and the afflicted. It will impose an age tax on older Americans in this nation who throughout their lives paid into the system through income tax and now will be double and triple taxed by the imposition of a 30% sales tax that would create an enormous burden on older Americans in this country. Third, this unfair tax act would detonate Social Security by eliminating its source of funding. This legislation is extreme, and it is functionally the GOP tax scam part 2. We will expose it, and under the tremendous leadership of Senate Democrats, Leader Schumer, in partnership with House Democrats, do everything we can to stop it.
There was a pretty robust debate in a committee hearing a few weeks ago about an amendment allowing weapons into committee hearings that Republicans removed. It actually doesn't really have any effect because the House rules supersede that says that weapons cannot be brought anywhere on the Capitol complex, including onto the floor of the House. But there's no screening mechanism in place to prevent that from happening. Are you concerned that there could be members of Congress that are carrying weapons throughout the Capitol complex, even down to the House floor, especially since the mags have been taken down outside the House chamber?
Yeah, I don't have an opinion on this issue one way or the other. I haven't looked closely into it, but here's what I will say generally about the first few weeks of this extreme MAGA Republican majority. They are focused on issues that have nothing to do with making life better for everyday Americans. And every single week, there's another example of Republicans not focused on dealing with inflationary pressures, not focused on jobs, not focused on the economy, not focused on the health and well-being of the American people, not focused on public safety, not focused on lowering costs. So today, the so-called Committee on Weaponization, which is really just an extreme MAGA Republican subcommittee to obstruct justice, is again going to convene focused on peddling conspiracy theories and catering to the far right-wing fringe of America. This is not a Republican majority in the House of Representatives that is engaged in doing anything to make life better for everyday Americans. They'd rather go investigate President Biden's family and laptops than address the issues of concern that affect the middle class, those who aspire to be part of the middle class, and everyday Americans. And it's shameful, and I don't expect it to change.
Thank you. Have you spoken with, or will you speak to Speaker McCarthy about some of the conduct of his
I have not had that conversation with Speaker McCarthy, but as far as I'm concerned, the behavior of the extreme MAGA Republicans speaks for itself. And I'm confident that the overwhelming majority of the American people found that aggressive, childish, petulant behavior by the extreme MAGA Republicans who were yelling and screaming on the floor of the House during President Biden's State of the Union address to be distasteful.
Should he, though, have intervened to some degree? This is a state.
Thanks. Next question.
On the subject of Congressman, another Republican school controversy is their assertion that the FBI has been weaponized against people who express dissent in school board meetings. They're even trying to link some sort of reform with funding for a new FBI headquarters. What's your strongest argument at this point against that kind of allegation?
Well, the so-called House Republican Weaponization Committee, which is really a committee to obstruct justice and a committee to protect insurrectionists, has been a complete disaster for them. The public doesn't support it because they understand that the only thing that's really being weaponized is the extreme MAGA Republican majority weaponizing the Congress against the interests of everyday Americans. And the public is smart. The American people are smart. They're not buying any of the foolishness that extreme MAGA Republicans have been saying about the weaponization of the FBI. But this is a group now, extreme MAGA Republicans, led by their former president, who are actively inciting violence against law enforcement professionals. They want to defund the FBI. They don't actually support law and order. Extreme MAGA Republicans are about lawlessness and disorder.
Just generally, what are your thoughts on the Republicans holding that testimony, or they're hearing testimony from the FBI whistleblowers, just generally? And I have a second question as well.
Again, the conspiracy theorists on the other side of the aisle continue to, peddle fantasies about the deep state, continue to attack the FBI and federal law enforcement officials, and it's all in service of defending the insurrectionist in chief, who they continue to bend the knee to, and who apparently is the leading Republican candidate for president, despite all that we have seen over the last several years. They can't find someone else, someone more reasonable, rational, someone who behaves like a normal human being. They can't find someone else. And so it's a sad state of affairs in terms of who has taken over the Republican Party. This is not Bob Dole's Republican Party. It's not John McCain's Republican Party. This is not Mitt Romney's Republican Party. It's George Santos's Republican Party, and it's Marjorie Taylor Greene's Republican Party. And how do we know that? Yesterday, they defended George Santos, defended him, protected him, shielded George Santos from accountability. They don't even want an up or down vote on expulsion. For George Santos, this is not an ordinary situation. This is one of the most extraordinary situations that the Congress has ever seen in our nation's history. George Santos lied about his entire life, lied about his jobs, lied about his finances, lied about his charitable work, lied about his professional background, lied about his education, lied about his mother perishing during September 11th, lied about his Jewish heritage. His whole life is a fiction, and it was made up so that he could get elected to Congress under false pretenses. And, by the way, he pled guilty to criminal conduct in Brazil. And notwithstanding that entire parade of horribles of a life resume, George Santos was protected and defended and coddled by House Republicans, many of whom including so-called moderates in New York, promised accountability, but the first opportunity they got to prove whether they meant what they said, these so-called moderates voted with the extremists, as they always do, to shield and defend and coddle George Santos. This is who the Republican Party, unfortunately, has become at this moment in time.
And then just quickly, a second question on the debt ceiling. Is there anything?
And I believe the Department of Defense has made the appropriate decision in its totality that every single segment of society should be welcomed if you are willing to put your life on the line to serve the United States of America in uniform and protect and defend our freedoms abroad in an increasingly dangerous world. That means everyone: white, black, Latino, Asian, Native American, men, women, gay, straight, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, secular, religious, everyone should be welcomed in a diverse society, particularly when they are willing to serve. That's why it's so irresponsible from a national security standpoint that extreme MAGA Republicans have said, we're going to attack members of the LGBTQ plus community. We're going to attack communities of color. We're going to ban books. We're going to continue bullying people in the transgender community. And most viciously, we are going to undermine a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions. Military women and military spouses, that's extraordinary that they've politicized this bill in such a cancerous way. As House Democrats, we are going to cut out the cancer that the extreme MAGA Republicans have put in the National Defense Authorization Act, no matter what it takes. And we're going to partner with Senate Republicans and Senate Democrats to get a responsible National Defense Authorization Act.
Initiatives to help Americans deal with extreme heat. Republicans recently have characterized the president as having a climate fetish. What's your response to that?
Yeah, I haven't heard that phrase before, but it is no surprise. I mean, I think some of these folks, instead of focusing on solving problems for the American people, are in some diabolical laboratory trying to cook up phrases to undermine President Biden and people who are actually trying to solve problems on behalf of the American people. The climate crisis is real. We see it all over the country and all throughout the world. We've made some progress in that regard. The Inflation Reduction Act represents the largest investment in countering the climate crisis ever enacted in the history of the world. And that was done under the leadership of President Biden to set our planet on a sustainable trajectory forward, meaningfully combat the climate crisis, and stand up a clean energy economy that will allow for the creation of good paying jobs that will benefit people all across the country. That's responsible leadership that has been brought to us by President Biden. You got many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who don't believe that the climate crisis is real, and they continue to bury their heads in the sand, perhaps because some of them are in the pocket of big oil.
One quick follow-up. Any concerns about meeting climate goals? Today, the Supreme Court green-lighted the construction of the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Are you at all concerned about this?
I think that it's an all hands on deck moment here in America and throughout the world, and combating the climate crisis should not be a partisan issue because extreme weather events hit blue states and they hit red states. This should be an American issue, not a partisan issue. And I'm thankful that we have someone in the White House, President Biden, who is taking the climate crisis seriously and is leading the charge on decisive action.
But the president has been pretty firm about specific climate goals and emission goals. Are you concerned that those goals can still be met?
Yes, I believe that they will be met because of the leadership of President Biden and a growing consensus throughout America, even if not here in the Congress, that the climate crisis is a real issue to be tackled, not as a partisan issue, not as a Democratic issue, or an issue for the Republicans to oppose, but as an American issue. Yeah, thanks.
There's some reporting suggesting that former President Trump could be indicted for January 6 related issues very soon. How concerned are you about the prospect for protests here at the Capitol? And do you want staff to work from home, as some Democratic offices did when previous indictments came down?
Well, I have full confidence in the Sergeant at Arms, as well as the Capitol Police, to make sure that they will continue to provide a safe and secure environment for staff, for visitors, as well as for the members of Congress who serve in this institution. Never again should we see a violent assault on the Capitol take place. An assault, by the way, that there's every reason to believe was incited by the former twice impeached insurrectionist in chief and former President of the United States of America. It's my hope that former President Trump will behave responsibly moving forward, but I'm not holding my breath. This is why it will be important for those Republicans who currently serve in the House or in the Senate to walk away from the big lie, from the notion that President Trump should be sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue right now. They should walk away from the notion that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. It was not. In terms of the Electoral College, Joe Biden beat Donald Trump like a piñata. Wasn't close. He won in state after state after state that was central to a decisive Electoral College victory. And Joe Biden got more than 80 million votes throughout the country. And it was the big lie that led to the violent insurrection. In terms of the court case, at the end of the day, it's my view that the system should just be allowed to work as intended. And that means that the prosecutors and whatever judges may preside over the various court cases, as well as the defense attorneys, follow the facts, apply the law, be guided by the Constitution. Take the last two.
Sir, there's a push among some in your party to censure Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, especially now that she's moving to censure Congresswoman Tlaib. Do you support censuring Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene?
There's a censure resolution that has previously been introduced with respect to Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I think that if the House decides that they want to go down this road in terms of censure, that probably should be right at the top of the list. Last question.
Mr. Jeffries, back to the tragedy in Maine. Is there anything you believe the White House and President Biden should be doing to combat gun violence in this country?
Well, President Biden has been a tremendous leader in this space. He opened up, for the first time, the White House office on gun safety. We clearly have a gun violence epidemic here in the United States of America that needs to be addressed with the fierce urgency of now. In terms of what that looks like from a congressional standpoint, working with our colleagues in the Senate, great leadership from President Biden, that remains to be seen in the next few weeks. Right now, I think our focus is on making sure that we are there for the people in Maine who've been afflicted by this tragedy, and that the suspect who was on the loose is apprehended. Thank you, everyone.
On Tuesday night, obviously there were several Biden-won districts on Long Island, and the GOP made some inroads there, including in Suffolk County. What is your assessment of what's going on Long Island? Is winning there still part of the calculus for you to win control of the House next year? And if so, how do you reverse the trends there?
Well, the interesting thing is that the Suffolk County district was held by Lee Zeldin for the previous 6 to 8 years. And so it was won by a Republican. It's fascinating to me. It tells you the kind of position that my friends on the other side are in. Decisively win in Ohio. Decisively win in Virginia. decisively win in Kentucky, decisively win in New Jersey, decisively win in Pennsylvania, win seats that were trending in the other direction in South Brooklyn, flip seats in Rockland County, New York 17. And despite all of that, we hear about Suffolk County, a seat that Republicans have held for the last 5 terms. So do I think that that is in any way indicative of their prospects in November of 2024? It's a laughable prospect. It tells you how desperate they are. And all we're saying is the politics are going to be the politics. I think we've got a tremendous amount of momentum, but there should be a time and place to govern. We want to put people over politics. We want to deal with the child care issues that exist in America right now. We want to deal with making sure that the affordability connectivity program that allows for internet access all across the country continues to be funded. We want to make sure that there's disaster assistance for the American people. These are all requests made by the Biden administration that we should meet because it helps everybody. In urban America, in rural America, in suburban America, in small town America, in the heartland of America, in Appalachia. We're just asking our Republican colleagues to join us to make a difference for the American people. But what we hear from them is that we will never put people over politics. Sad.
I want to go back to something you set up at the top, where you said the number in the CR has to be the FY23, the current spending. But
that's our position.
But the Democrats would insist on policy preferences. Is there some leeway there where basically you guys could give in a little bit on some policy riders in order to if you got the FY23 numbers?
There is not an extreme MAGA Republican policy rider that I think we would find acceptable. Are we going to agree to further criminalize abortion care? Are we going to agree to a nationwide abortion ban? Are we going to agree to gut programs within the military designed to make sure that our military is broadly representative of our society? Are we going to allow the extreme MAGA Republicans to bully LGBTQ children with increasing suicide rates? There's not a single extreme MAGA Republican policy writer that we can agree to, in my humble opinion.
Members of the House Freedom Caucus have just put the Speaker on notice, basically saying that they're giving him 10 days to come up with a plan and fiscal responsibility, things like that. Your reaction to this, if they threaten with another motion to vacate?
Well, the House Republican civil war rages on, and yesterday it hit a new low, including apparently acts of physical violence. And it's my hope that they will dial down the temperature and join House Democrats in putting people over politics and delivering for the American people. And the House Republican reality show is out of control right now. And it is undermining the ability of the Congress to solve problems on behalf of hardworking American taxpayers. Okay.
We're going to get this ethics report tomorrow from George Santos. He has not been.
Okay.
We're going to get this ethics report tomorrow from George Santos. He has not been convicted in a court of law. Precedent in the House of Representatives is for a member to have been convicted for a member of the Confederacy. That said, do you think it's appropriate to vote to expel something like George Santos now that he's had due process, but not due process in a court of law?
Well, any expulsion resolution should be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. It seems to me that George Santos is unfit to serve as a member of Congress based on the clear lies that he had told to the people of the 3rd Congressional District in New York. He is a serial fraudster. But in terms of any expulsion resolution that is before the Congress, potentially at the end of this month or the beginning of next month, I'll reserve judgment until I've had an opportunity to review the ethics report.
Some Republicans have expressed their desire to potentially bring another Israel aid bill to the floor that does not include the pay for it by slashing the IRS budget, instead coming up with a different way to pay for it. Would you be open to considering that, considering the fact that some Democrats have already voted for the initial package?
It's important to provide support for Israel in Israel's time of great and urgent need, but also, of course, to provide support for the Ukrainian people, provide support for the humanitarian assistance requested by the Biden administration in connection with Palestinian civilians who are in harm's way, and provide support for our allies in the Indo-Pacific. And so my view is that what is in front of us at this moment relates to a bipartisan negotiation that is taking place in the Senate, connected to President Biden's request for funding to meet the national security needs of the American people. The House Republicans have lost the legitimacy with respect to governing on this issue. They can't even pass their own appropriations bills. And so I do think that House Democrats and House Republicans can engage in the negotiations at a four corners level with our Senate colleagues, but the notion that House Republicans should lead on this issue or any issue, the train has left the station.